Next curve.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Next Curve's Rethink webcast. In this episode, we will be talking about the topic of what is the digital present and future of Industry 4.0. We all hear about it. We probably scratch our heads a bit about what it means these days. But I have the honor of having J.Gold of J.Gold Associates here with me to talk about this topic. And Jack, you and I, we attended PTC's LiveWorks event in Boston a few weeks ago, and we had a chance to hang out. Thank you so much for jumping on my webcast here to share your thoughts and perspectives with the Next Curve listeners and viewers. So again, thank you so much, Jack. I think this is going to be
Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to talk with you.
Yeah, always. And, to our audience, Jack and I have known each other for a long time. We really look up to this gentleman because he is an industry veteran. And I'm going to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself, Jack, to the audience. So the floor is yours. The mic is yours. Camera is yours.
Wow. I got the whole show here all to myself.
Yeah, you do.
Well, for those of you who don't know me, I am an industry analyst. I'm founder and principal analyst at J.Gold Associates. I've been doing this independently since 2005, so it's been a while. It's amazing how quickly that's gone by. Yeah. When Leonard says I'm a veteran analyst, it primarily just means I'm old and been doing this forever.
No.
Before this, I was an analyst at Meta Group for about 12 years. And that was, of course, acquired by Gartner in about 2005. That's when I left, started my own thing. Before that, I'd worked at some large companies like Digital Equipment and Xerox, some small startups. My background is in engineering way back when, once upon a time. I was an engineer. And I also have an MBA, but I've been, all over the place. I've done a lot of different stuff, a lot of different technologies. And one of the nice things about being independent on my own is I get to pursue what interests me, all the good stuff, right? It's not, you're not pigeonholed into one area. So I look at mobile, I look at 5G, I look at security, a little thing called AI that no one's interested in.
Yeah,
lots of different technologies, cloud-based systems, and of course, Edge, which is becoming almost synonymous with cloud and 5G together. Not quite. We can have that discussion some other time, I'm sure, over a couple of beers.
Yeah.
So I'm a pretty broad range.
Yeah, you do. And as a pioneer, you're like one of the pioneers of independent analysts. And there is a group of you that continue to bring some amazing insights to the industry, and hats off to you as well as the others who have really paved the road for the independent, because I'm independent as well. And
but you've done a few good things yourself, Leonard. Now, thank you, but it's an interesting scenario when we talk about independent analysts these days, because it's all over the board. But there are a few that have really stood out, and you're one of them. So.
Oh, thank you. And I think likewise of you. But anyway, we can move on with each other on the back thing and get into this, because we are going to be talking about Industry 4.0. Jack, I think this is, I love the intro that you provided, because it should give our audience a perspective on the multidisciplinary lens that you apply to this. And I like to consider that I do sort of the same, because I think you and we cover many of the similar domains. And I think that gives us a unique view, and also gives us some unique perspectives to debate these concepts such as Industry 4.0. But I wanted to get your take. I mean, we've been talking about Industry 4.0 forever, and almost like IoT. It's like something that people seem to never never be able to realize in whatever state of expectation that they had set for this thing. So what is it in your mind? And, maybe help us understand what are the bits and parts that make up Industry 4.0.
Yeah, it's one of these terms that everyone throws around and no one really knows what it means, right? I agree with you.
Yeah.
And frankly, it means different things to different people. So one of the problems with talking about Industry 4.0 is assuming that people are even at Industry 3.0 in many cases, or 2.0.
Right.
There are a lot of companies out there. Manufacturing is one of these industries. I need to be a little bit careful here because I don't want to put everyone in one bucket, but there are a lot of old school manufacturers that are still doing things from the 60s and 70s and they're not going to change much.
Yeah.
And that's their business, and the business model works, and go for it.
Yeah.
But what we're talking about when we start talking about 4.0 is, like everything these days, it's data driven. It is utilizing a lot of the data technologies from sensing data on, with IoT on machine tools and cameras on the shop floor to see how things, not to see how people are necessarily working good or bad, but to see how things are flowing and to make sure that if there is a problem, it's caught very quickly.
Yeah.
That includes, having networks around the company. So there's kind of subtopic of, okay, I've got to have connectivity, and then if I've got connectivity, I've got to have security, and if I've got security, then how do I make sure that there's privacy? I mean, the problem with labeling something, manufacturing 4.0 or 5.0 or 8.0 is it's not one thing. It is multiple things to multiple people, and we're all in different states of adopting it.
Yeah, and I'll agree with you because, to generalize the manufacturing, right, and the different segments is not helpful. And when we look at the basket of technologies, the basket of, let's say, I guess, transformative concepts that are kind of packed into this idea of Industry 4.0, generalizing that is also not helpful, right? I mean, and so oftentimes, my view is like, how helpful is this beyond just being an idea, or a discussion point, or something that you put up on the slide to help you position where the present and the future is of manufacturing, right? I think that's where we get into, we struggle a lot, right? Because you have discrete manufacturing, you have process manufacturing, very, very different. And so the context is very important. And, I think, I generally agree with what you're sharing with the audience right now. It's just sort of amorphous, but where it becomes helpful is maybe, as a guide to figure out what a next step might be, whatever it is your current state is, right?
Right.
Outside of that, I don't know. I mean, that's why I think the various industries that have espoused this term, Industry 4.0, have really struggled. No,
I think what happens, Leonard, is that we get enthralled with technology as opposed to looking at the actual benefit to the business.
Right.
And so, everyone wants to say everything's got to be in the cloud. You've got to have these big data centers. You've got to be analyzing every step of every process you've ever taken. Right. And the truth is, within a lot of manufacturing organizations, the margins are pretty thin.
Right.
Yeah. And you're not going to go out and totally redo your factory when your margins are 4, 5, 6, 7%.
Right.
If you're GM, if you're Ford, if you're the big guys, if you're an ExxonMobil, pick your favorite industry, right? Pharmaceuticals, sure, the margins are good and you can do that. But if you're a machine tool maker with 100 employees or 1,000 employees, and your margins are 3, 4, 5% by the time you're done, which isn't all that unusual in a lot of manufacturing industries, you're not going to go out and wholesale change your processes.
Right.
You will go out of business before you can do that. I mean, the ideal way to think about this, and what people have done for a very long time, if you're going to do it right, is you take a segment of your business. So let's say you're at 3.0 today and you want to get to 4.0, right? You take a segment of your business, 5%, 10%, 15% of your business, and you say, okay, if I take that and use that kind of as my, experimental basis, what can I do to upgrade my business to 4.0? So yes, I'll put sensors on all the machine tools. I'll put cameras in the factories. I'll put wireless networks around. I'll add edge computing. I'll add all of this stuff, knowing that I'm making a bet on 10 or 15% of my business, not 100% of my business all at once.
Right.
And if it works out and I get an ROI, then great. I'll roll it out gradually to the rest of my business, because I can't just tear down my business for 6 months and put all this technology in place. And so I think when we talk about 4.0, we have to talk about it in stages, right? It's not an either or. It's not something that you do overnight. It is something that you gradually implement over years, probably, and do it in the segments of your business that make the most sense. Maybe it's customer service. Maybe it's order placement, or getting more supplies inside. Maybe it's doing modeling. But things like creating 3D worlds of your whole factory. Sounds great, and there's a lot of super tools to do it. But how many people can actually afford to do that? And so that's the problem I have when people throw these numbers out here, right? There's a lot of people still on manufacturing 2.0 as opposed to 4.0.
Right. And you're speaking to a general problem, or it's general and pervasive problem, which is the brownfield problem. We see it across industries, not just in manufacturing, across the board. And I would just add on top of what you just explained to the audience, taking more of a problem-oriented approach to prioritizing your investments in modernizing your infrastructure, and if you want to call that, riding the industry 4.0 wave of some sort, or creating a roadmap, that really is vital. And I think it's very difficult, oddly, for a lot of technology companies to help clients with that. And so while there is that role of the SI to maybe help with that, and the consultant to help with that, I think one of the big challenges is that the technology base and what is underpinning a lot of these concepts seem to constantly change, right? And so we have these. I mean, geez, it seems like there's a new hype technology every week or every day. I mean, quite honestly, I think no doubt the ones that probably have risen to the top of the headlines have been like industrial metaverse, obviously generative AI, and so I wanted to get your thoughts there, Jack, in regards to how you see these new sort of hype technologies influencing and possibly revolutionizing the current vision of Industry 4.0, right? And the reason why I say that is because, over time, it always seems like we continue to throw more technologies into the conceptual bucket. You know what I'm saying?
So let me answer it this way. It may not be exactly what you're asking me, but I like to go down this thread because this is what I talk to a lot of people about, which is the bottom line. If you're a business, is no matter what you invest in, you better get an ROI. Because if the ROI is negative, you're not going to be in business very long to do it, right? So there is such a thing as negative ROI. Called a bad investment. Right. Well, no, it's usually in startups, right? That's how they raise their money. Because if you've got a negative ROI, you're worth a lot more in the stock market than if you're making money for some reason. And I can't figure that out why. But okay, all good. No, but so what I talk to folks about is, and it gets back to my point earlier, which is, what are the processes? What are the points? What are the pain points that you think better technology can solve for you, right? And that's where you want to invest. That's where you want to concentrate your effort. Now, you talk about SIs, and that's a great point. one of the biggest problems that Industry 4.0 has for many companies, probably 75% or 80% of the companies, is they don't have the resources necessary to make this happen for them. It's just not there. And to go to, I won't name them, to go to an SI, we won't go down the list, but to go to an SI, you're paying tens of millions of dollars potentially in an organization that may be very small. And so it's just not a viable approach. So what I talk to a lot of companies about is saying, yes, we can talk about 4.0, we can talk about 4.5, we can talk about 5, we can talk about 6. But for most companies, they really need to think about technologies that have been tried and true and have matured, as opposed to being leading edge. And the reason I mention that is, you mentioned the metaverse, you mentioned generative AI. Those are great. They have lots of potential. But for many companies, it's not truly proven technology that they should be investing in at this point. They really need to wait. It's the typical technology curve, right? You've got the early adopters, you've got the mainstream adopters, you've got the late adopters. And for many companies, especially that are making money, but that aren't making that much money, you don't want to be an early adopter. It's really, really tough. One, you don't have the resources, whether that's people resources or money resources. Two, even if you do have the money resources, you may not be able to handle hire the people that you need to handle the technology. It's really tough to get experts out there. And three, I hate to say this, but not all SIs are doing a great job for clients these days, as we've all seen, right? There's a lot of negative.
Yeah, I and there is this push, right? There is sort of this market push and pressure that a lot of enterprises are getting from technology vendors. And I agree with you. You can't all of a sudden have a bunch of Gen AI experts. You can't have a bunch of AI experts. I mean, we barely have those. Filling the gap is tremendously difficult. And oftentimes, these SIs, they don't have the experience in some of the technology, the solutions that they're pitching. And so I think and this is maybe a bit of a cautionary thing for even the SIs or just the whole stack. Be careful. And this is why the detrimental side of the hype cycle is when you go down the slope of disillusionment, you're disappointing people. And that means bad business, right? You are selling something you cannot deliver on. And I think what we've seen with a lot of these concepts such as Industry 4.0 and IoT and 5G and others, there's been a significant amount of disappointment, especially against initial expectations. But what seems like is happening here is that there's this very extended tail of discovery of what is really valuable. And what we're finding is we don't have enough of those human resources, like you're saying, Jack. And I think this is spot on, who can actually work with enterprises to bring these solutions to bear in a way that can be as transformative as promised. And so, it's definitely a challenging situation that it seems like we continue to get ourselves into.
Yeah, and a lot of companies have also had very bad experiences trying to implement some of this stuff. We can't forget that. So failure is a real problem, right? A great example of a technology ahead of its time, I don't know if you just noticed, but a couple of minutes ago, I've got this automated camera sitting on my desktop, and it shifted me left for some reason, or right, or wherever it was, and it's moving me back and forth. Right. That's AI technology at work, folks. That doesn't work so well, right?
Well, this is the interesting thing, Jack. I was at Sensors Converge this week, and one of the things that I kind of put out there was, this is an observation, actually over a few years, but I've never seen anyone, highlight this pretty obvious observation. AI is about 95% correct. And while that might sound really great, right? For a lot of businesses who are setting expectations for what they can do with AI, 95% is actually pretty horrible. You know, I think their expectation is 100%. And so you're absolutely right. So that that little glitch fell into the 95%, right? Or the 5%.
Well, so let me give you a great example of that. And this is going back probably 20 years. Years ago, a couple of decades ago, people were really big on, we're never going to have to use keyboards again. We're going to be able to talk to our computers. They're going to know what we're saying. Dictation systems. You know, IBM was big in this with Via Voice. There were a bunch of different ones, right? Dragon and systems, et cetera. And they would put out ads that said, we are 95 to 96% accurate. Well, if you're doing a 10,000 word document, you know, that's 1,000 or 500 to 1,000 words that they got wrong.
Right.
And it takes you longer to go in and edit those 500 words because you've got to find them, first of all, than it would if you just sat there and typed away.
Right.
So this is ongoing. This has been ongoing for decades, Leonard. It's not new with just AI that we're talking about now. And that's, people forget that though, right? When you move on to the next technology, they kind of they don't kind of remember what happened with the last technology, and that's a real hassle.
Well, yeah. Well, you know, I'll actually argue I'll argue that the people who have been it know. It's
fair.
Who don't know. They don't know.
Right.
They're just looking at what's showing up on the glass. They think it's magic. They think it's 100%. And that's what they go with. But the engineers, in my experience over the last year and a half that we've been exposed to this Gen AI stuff, the engineers know. And, you know, to whatever credit you can give OpenAI, they spend actually a lot of time trying to tell people, hey, you know, this is not a perfect technology. It has a lot of problems, right? And so the problem
I'm sorry for interrupting, Leonard, but the problem we have is, and I know you know this very well, is it's all technology these days is all promoted by hype. It's not promoted by realistic expectations.
The actual exhibition of value, right?
Right. It's all about, what did I read on Twitter today, or or Instagram, or pick your favorite one. Look at what the press does with Chat GPT and Gen AI in general. And none of that stuff is realistic. It's going to take over the world. It's going to kill people. Within 10 years, 90% of jobs are going to be gone. I mean, this is all garbage. But people hear this stuff and they don't know any better. And they believe it. Yeah. And that's a real failing, in my opinion, from the perspective of the technology itself, because you're setting unrealistic expectations, which means that people actually come and get it. And they find that it doesn't meet expectations, then you look like a jerk or worse.
Sure.
But also it sets up these companies for failure when they can't meet those expectations. The companies that are delivering the technology, and that's not good for anybody either.
No, I you know what, I agree with you totally. The thing though is I won't blame the technology because it is what it is. But I think what you're alluding to, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you have to blame, you have to hold accountable is really more what it is for people's judgment and trusting technologies that they don't understand. Right.
Well, and these companies have a responsibility to educate as well, right?
Yeah, and that's responsible AI. That's part of responsible AI. And I'm glad to see that there are a lot of companies that are starting to recognize that. And that was like one of the bright spots for me coming out of HPE's Discover. Even though they came out with their own little thing, right? Their own cloud large language model service. A lot of the sessions were really about how do we use this responsibly. So, that was a little bit encouraging. But I think we're gonna find that kind of perspective is going to that theme is going to become bigger and louder as people actually realize what the technology can and can't do.
Well, and even circling back to our original discussion here, right? In Industry 4.0, there was a huge hype cycle about how that's going to dramatically change everybody's company.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, it hasn't. The top 20% probably, the bottom 20% hasn't touched them at all, and the other 60% in the middle, a little bit here, a little bit there, where it makes sense, I'll do this or I'll do that. Maybe I'll move some data to the cloud. Then I don't have to have my own IT department, which probably I don't have anyway because I can't hire people. So it's really about not getting ahead of the technology, which is, I think, what you were talking about, which is you can't blame the technology. The technology is technology. But you can blame the people around the technology for not setting the proper expectations so that people can actually get an ROI when they try to implement this stuff.
Absolutely, because it's all about investment, and you're investing for improvement. That's what transformation should be about. Obviously, you don't want to transform into something that's less efficient, less beneficial to the customer, and so So let me ask you this question. I don't know if, okay, so I'm going to ask, are we ready for Industry 5.0? But you've already brought up Industry 8.0. So I don't know. I don't know about this question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. Are we ready for Industry 5.0?
Well, I brought up Industry 8.0 because I figured by then I won't be around. I won't have to worry about it. It's fine.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, nice attitude.
No, are we ready for 5.0? Who's ready for 5.0? Yeah. If you haven't even gone to 4.0, are you going to skip one?
Yeah.
That's the question I always have with this stuff, right? Let's get back to something that maybe people know a little bit more about, which is the wireless industry, right? We went from 4.0 to 5.0. We're still not really at 5. No. We're sort of in between. There's a lot of bridging between 4 and 5. There's still, by the way, you talk about industry. There's a lot of industry that still has sensors out there on 3.
Yeah.
3G, and they're getting shut off, so they're going to have to move. But there's a lot of stuff out there: meter readers, utility companies, lots of stuff.
Cars.
Right. So when you ask, are we ready for 5? There probably are a few companies out there that are already looking at it, as we're looking for. There are companies out there already looking at 6G wireless.
Yeah.
But the majority is, in wireless, we have the decade rule, right? We usually jump from one G to another G about every 10 years.
Yeah.
In manufacturing and in industry, it's probably at least that long, perhaps even longer. Right. And because the investments that companies make, look, if you're GM, you're spending, I don't know what the number is, tens of billions of dollars on tooling to get your plants up and running.
Right.
How often do you turn that over?
Yeah. I mean, the timelines are decades.
Yes.
Right? I mean, an asset will sit there for 20, 30 years. In some brownfield environments, you're still running stuff that's like 40, 50, sometimes maybe even 100 years old. I mean, no, you're so right. And I mean, I'll just add that, reinforcing a lot of the points that you're making, it's readiness, technological, organizational, people, blah, blah, blah. Which is really the key factor in how what is the ability for a company or organization to digest the concept and the change, right? To realize the benefit, and then the other thing is simply the expertise in applying technologies for benefit. That early on is typically very lacking, and one of the big problems is that, again, going back to what I said earlier, is the technology is advancing so quickly matching your state of readiness, the maturity of your technology portfolio, your process maturity, to what actually makes sense in terms of technologies you can adopt and apply to advance and improve your operations, manufacturing. That's a tough exercise. And I think because it's getting so complex, it's very difficult to find the experts who can actually architect a solution, and that roadmap that you're talking about, right? It's super hard. And we don't see a lot of organizations that are really great at it, being able to achieve this sort of a nirvana state of Industry 4.0. And I think Industry 5.0 is just I don't know, it's slideware.
Right. I think there's one other point that I know we agree on, but I'll raise it here. Just
maybe not. If we don't, then we'll have some fun.
I don't agree with anything you just said, Leonard. Sorry.
Awesome.
No, but I guess the point I was going to make, and I think it's relevant to what you were talking about, is that there are a lot of companies out there that look at a technology and say, I want to bring this technology in. How can I make it work? As opposed to looking at a problem and then trying to find a technology that solves that problem. So a lot of companies just have it backwards. And if you look at it from the perspective of the technology versus the problem, you're usually going to get it wrong, because what you end up doing is trying to force fit a new technology into your processes that may not work very well.
Yeah.
Resources or not, right? And so that's, I think, the problem that a lot of companies have. It's and a lot of skill sets that aren't available at a lot of companies, which is, how do I identify what my major problems are that I think I can map to a particular technology solution that will really help me out?
Yeah.
As opposed to going backwards, as opposed to saying, okay, we really need to be on Industry 5.0. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to deploy it, and then I'll figure out what the processes are afterwards. That's backwards.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And I know you've seen it. I've seen it as well. There are a lot of companies out there, the IT guys get enthralled with some technology. They bring it in-house and they say, we're going to have to make this work because it's so cool.
Yeah.
Why?
Exactly.
So yeah, I think from the perspective of which generation are we on, the question is not which generation of technology we're on. The question is, which generation of solution to a problem am I on?
Yeah, I like that. And I'm really disappointed that we haven't had a moment of disagreement, because, actually, to our audience, this gentleman right over here, he'll disagree with me quite a bit. And that usually spurs some really fun conversations and learning. So, Jack, I really appreciate you. I really appreciate, and I'm thankful that you took this opportunity to jump on my webcast here. And why don't you take a moment to share with the listeners and viewers how they can engage with you, find out more about what you're doing at J.Gold Associates. And so the mic is yours.
Thank you. Well, we're always happy to talk to companies about what they're trying to accomplish and help them steer in the right direction. I mean, we spend a lot of time looking at TCO and ROI studies. We spend a lot of time looking at the technology, excuse me, and spend a lot of time talking to companies about what we just talked about, which is forget about the hype. What is the problem you're trying to solve? And then then back into the hype if you want to go down that path. You can reach out. We have a website, www.jgoldassociates.com. Happy to talk to you. You can reach me on LinkedIn, on Twitter, email, whatever that makes the most sense. And let's engage. Happy to talk to companies and hopefully share a little bit of my knowledge, but also I gain a lot of knowledge by talking to these companies as well. So it's a two-way street.
Yep, that's awesome.
And Leonard, thank you very much for inviting me on your program.
It's long
I'm sorry
overdue.
we didn't disagree.
That's okay. I don't think the audience is gonna, they're not gonna lose any hair over that.
I've already done that. Thank you.
Oh, jeez. Should have been a little bit more mindful. Anyways, you have a good sense of humor. It wasn't a jab at you by any stretch of the imagination. But anyway, thanks for everyone for tuning in. Oh, geez. We hope you appreciated and enjoyed this installment. Found it informative. I sure did. Every single time I'm hanging out with Jack, I always learn something. And so please subscribe to our YouTube channel. The easiest thing to do is probably just subscribe to our research portal at www.next-curve.com. And, you can subscribe. It's a one-stop shop for all things Next Curve, and you'll be notified when we publish new articles and content. And so once again, Jack, thank you so much for your time and your insights and your wisdom. And until next time, we will see you, and stay healthy.